Okay, hello, my friends. It is Sunday, February 2nd, 2025, and this is a daily brief. In this video, I want to talk about how the Russian war machine works. My whole goal in doing these videos is to help you be informed by providing context in the war in Ukraine. And what I saw today almost perfectly fits with this title of how the Russian war machine works. Okay, let's look at first 1,320 Russians off the battlefield, 6 tanks, 14 armored fighting vehicles, 45 artillery systems, 80 vehicles and fuel tanks off the battlefield. These are all Russian losses as calculated by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. If we look at how many Shahed drones were launched into Ukraine, there were only 55, which is kind of low. They usually are at an average about 60 or so. Sometimes it's 100, sometimes it gets down to 40, 50, maybe even 30. 40 were shot down, another 13 were suppressed by electronic warfare. Zelensky recorded that Russia attacked Ukraine this week with drones and missiles and bombs in 1 week. 50 missiles, 660 drones, 760 guided bombs. And that's not the end of it. There's more to the story there, like guided, not just missiles, guided bombs, those kind of things, artillery strikes and little FPV drones and all kinds of things. Okay, here's Andrew Perpetua for the 30th, and it looks like about the equipment losses were about 1-to-1 on January 30th. On January 31st, he's a little bit behind as he tabulates this. It's about 2, maybe 2.5-to-1. And I'm very comfortable when I see 3-to-1, but you don't always get that. Okay, yesterday we were talking about this. Russia damages over 1,300 cultural monuments across Ukraine, the Culture Ministry says, and this was the way that they focused on this ballistic missile strike on a hotel. I focused on it very differently in this video, what it's like during a ballistic missile attack, and not a lot of you watched it, but you should watch it. If you haven't watched this, you need to. Greg Terry happened to be there, he was filming the hotel, and then he heard people yell to run. They ran. And then they're waiting in this corridor while you can hear a double tap. Actually, this is the third. The third ballistic missile comes in while they're waiting, while we're watching this video here as he's talking. So go back and watch that if you want some real context of what it's really like for Ukrainians in being attacked by Russians. Okay, Ukrainian civilian deaths are shockingly higher than previously thought, up to 100,000, according to The Independent. Now, the previous UN estimate was remarkably low. Everybody knew it was low. They said 8,000. And then they would say 8,000, but they would also say, yes, but the estimates will rise when we get more information. Well, it's looking like more. And the gap is explained by mass graves. And so that will help us understand that. And you can't be at 8,000 when you see civilians being targeted in their own apartment complexes day over day. Okay, this is the British intelligence update, and they're talking about something that's just absolutely fascinating to me, that the Russians would do this. Okay, so it's highly likely that injured Russian personnel are being returned to combat duties in Ukraine with unhealed wounds, often on crutches. Open source reporting suggests that Russia's 20th Combined Arms Army has formed assault groups made up of walking wounded and directed them into combat. But why would they do that? Well, they're expendable anyway. It's clogging up the medical facilities in the back. And hey, if they can take a little bit of ground, that's still forward progress. There's a realistic possibility that Russian commanders are directing this activity to retain personnel who would otherwise become lost in the overburdened medical system. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, Russia has sustained approximately 830,000 casualties since February 2022, of which it is likely that over 400,000 have required treatment in medical facilities away from the front line. Well, that would mean that the other 330,000 or so are KIA rather than just wounded. Okay. The injured soldiers have likely been returned to their units after being discharged from forward medical facilities prematurely at the behest of their commanders. This reduces the pressure on the overburdened military medical system and increases units' ability to track and use wounded servicemen for operational tasks. The lack of proper medical attention in facilities away from the front lines necessitates the transfer of administrative and medical burden back to the troops' units. But if you really don't care about human life. I mean, they're just using up this resource and being done with it. That's the way that they seem to think about this, and it's really bizarre. But this is the way the Russian war machine works. Okay, here's another view of how the Russian war machine works. The Russian offensive method is bringing about a slow operational maneuver on the battlefield, but these envelopments require significant planning, foresight, manpower, and equipment, and do not restore rapid mechanized maneuver onto the battlefield. Okay. So if you just want to have a war of attrition, that's what they're doing. There's not going to be this big breakthrough somewhere where they're just going to punch through and just keep going all the way to Kyiv. That's not going to happen. The system is not designed for that. Russia's ability to continue slowly enveloping settlements instead of attempting to conduct rapid mechanized maneuver that penetrates Ukraine's defensive lines and quickly achieves operationally significant advances in the medium to long term is contingent on Russia's ability to supply the high quantities of personnel and material needed to sustain these operations. And so one article here bleeds into the next, like this British intelligence update bleeds into the ISW article that I just read here, and no pun intended with bleeds either, but that's why they're using those personnel in those ways. Okay, the Pokrovsk direction remains one of the hottest on the battlefield, and it shows the enveloping, like the little border towns around Pokrovsk are being enveloped systematically, and eventually they're going to try to envelop Pokrovsk. In January alone, our warriors neutralized over 15,000 invaders here, with about 7,000 eliminated permanently, according to Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi. So, and they just keep coming for Pokrovsk. Now, Ukraine killed 50%. Now, let's look at Kursk. Okay, in the Kursk region, North Korea sent about 11,000 North Koreans to Kursk, and Ukraine has killed 50% of the 11,000 North Koreans, according to Ukrainian and U.S. officials. Like, this is a new headline. It used to be we were hearing about 25%, then we're hearing about a third, and now we're up to hearing 50%. And that might account for the withdrawal of the North Koreans recently. Now, Russia still needs troops on the battlefield, and this is part of how the system works. Russia's obsession with imperial conquest, this is according to Spravdy, reaches new heights, with military recruiting advertisements around Russia now offering debt forgiveness of up to 10 million rubles. What does that mean? Which is equal to 18 years of Russia's current median individual income of about $474 a month. So 474 converted into rubles, and then So 18 years of debt reduction. Now, that doesn't mean you get 18 years pay. It doesn't work quite like that. This is Igor Shushko talking about the same thing. Desperation in Russia. Debt write-off up to 10 million rubles, or $100,000 or so. The fine print on the bottom line details the conditions. The debt must be in collections, and it will be forgiven after you sign a contract with the army. So that's how they're attracting those that are in the lowest kind of states to get their debt relief so that they can take care of their family and probably sacrifice their life in the process. But this is part of how the Russian war machine works. For the month of January, Russia and North Korea gained control of another 325 square kilometers of Ukrainian land, but it cost them 48,000 men. But they're willing to make that trade because that's how the Russian war machine works. At this current rate, it'll take them 123.8 years to metastasize themselves into the remaining 480,000 square kilometers of free Ukraine. Now, of course, that's all hyperbolic. It's not going to happen that way. They'll conclude the war well before something like that, but that shows the scale of what they're trying to accomplish and how slowly they're going. But they don't seem to mind because they're just throwing men at it because they have the resource. Okay, this is Andrew Perpetua showing Russians attacked military targets again, and this was an ambulance. It's clearly marked as an ambulance. It looks like a camper van almost or something like that, but it's clearly marked as an ambulance. And then they say attacking an ambulance once, maybe an accident. So getting pissed that your drone broke, and so that you attacked it a second time, now you're a certified war criminal. So they apparently came back after couldn't conclude the first successful attack and came back again. Really? Okay, but that's how the Russian war machine goes. Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit. In January, Ukraine's Unmanned Service Forces Regiment, the Birds of Magyar, crews hit and destroyed 4,387 Russian targets, including 1,298 personnel. Magyar reports that by March, 100 more crews will be trained, meaning even more Russian losses. And so the drones are game changing, but the other side can do drones too. And so it's like it's like an arm race in drone technology at this point, which is just fascinating to watch. Here is a drone attacking a Ukrainian drone attacking a Russian Lancet drone over the sky, and there it is in its sights. And in another 10 seconds, 5 seconds, there it goes. Okay, Ukraine, now here's another fascinating innovation. Ukraine is deploying, now it's not an innovation like technological, it's just a tactical innovation. Ukraine deploys FPV drones as stealth roadside bombs to strike Russian convoys. So you fly a drone out to the side of the road, hide it a little bit where it can see what's coming down the road and it can't see you, and then you just kind of wait for the truck or whatever to come by and pop yourself in front of it, and boom. Ukraine forces are hiding FPV drones in roadside grass along supply routes in the Kursk Oblast, enabling remote strikes on Russian vehicles. That's pretty crazy stuff. All right, last little thing. Darth Putin on this day in 2002, Ukraine dismantled its final Tu-160 supersonic heavy bomber. Okay, remember, this is part of that whole nuclear arms reduction. Having given up strategic arms, having no long-range ability to threaten Russia, Ukraine was subsequently rewarded with invasion and concern. Yep, that's what happened, unfortunately. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you today. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.